Hey everyone, it's Les from Comfortable Shoes Studio, and this is another episode of Art Making. I'm going to work on some more backgrounds in my Everything Everywhere journal, and I'm going to use some differently sized bubble wrap. This is little teeny tiny bubble wrap. I think this side is the good side. I've only got a couple of pages that are pre-done left, so I do want to change up the colors that I used. So last time I used a much darker shade of blue, and I want to use this bright aqua green. This is one of my favorite colors, so this kind of teal color. And I'm going to use the exact same technique that I used last time to apply the bubble wrap texture. I'm going to use a big wide soft brush. I'm going to squirt a tiny amount of this on there and spread it around. There we go. And I'm gonna do a whole bunch of pages with this technique, and I'll do a voiceover with it. I mean, I'm just putting a tiny bit of paint on there, and then brushing it on. It's like the simplest technique, but it's one I go back to again and again and again. I don't have to get my gel plates out. The only cleanup that will be necessary at the end of this will be cleaning out my brush. And I like that. I like a simple cleanup. I don't want to spend all night cleaning up after myself after an art making session. I'm just gently pressing this in. Alright, I'm going to be quiet now, and then I will do a bit of a voiceover for the rest of the video. Hey, so for this section of the video, the chatting portion, if you will, I want to talk a little bit more about the Everything Everywhere journal, but also talk about my philosophy for art journaling and journaling in general. And some of this is a repeat for some of you if you've been reading my blog or you've been here for a while, but sometimes I think it's important to go back to basics. So, my philosophy of an art journal and journaling in general is that an art journal or journal can hold anything and it's for everyone. And when you put something down onto the pages of a journal and you close it, it holds it for you. Um, it's a safe space. Um, Anyone on any budget can art journal. The tools don't matter as much as the work and the process. So you can art journal with a big stick pen and a folded up grocery bag if you really want to. The materials are there, the materials are available. You can make an art journal out of any scrap of paper. I've seen kids journal on cardboard pieces. I've seen people make great art on chunks of cardboard they picked up out of the recycle bin. Um, just make art and journal with what you have. If it's a ballpoint pen on a folded stack of office paper, that could be an art journal. Or maybe you go the old-fashioned junk journal. I started talking about, when was that? 2000, 2009, something like that. Um, where you grab a, promotional flyer from Starbucks and you journal in that. You know, it's all it's all potential. Every piece of paper, every ballpoint pen has a potential for being an art tool and making beautiful, beautiful art. You can draw and paint and doodle and collage, print and write, and any other art process you want in the art journal. You can make your art, you can rip out pages to make room for your art, Or you can let your art journal bulge and fan out until it won't close anymore. It can be pretty and messy, or just pretty or just messy. It can be cute with dull looking girls on or photos from magazines or hand drawn images from life. It can be 100% collaged. Um, it all counts as an art journal if you want it to. It's really about your perspective, your exploration, and what you want. Mostly I want people to know you don't got to spend hundreds of dollars to get started with art journaling or even to continue with it. I go back to the same simple tools again and again and again. Lately, this current Everything Everywhere art journal, I've been working a lot with gel pens, ballpoint pens, simple brush markers, and maybe occasionally throwing some mixed media stuff in there. This you'll go back to your favorites over and over and over again. I use watercolor a lot in my art journal. I use black and white a lot in my art journal because that's what I'm familiar with. Those are my old standbys, my favorites. I think I've pretty much proven that with anywhere from $10 to $25, you can get started with art journaling, and then over the course of a couple of months, take $10 or $20 at a time and flesh out that art journaling kit into something that will let you do a lot of different mixed media techniques on a budget. You don't have to spend hundreds at one point. You might spend hundreds over years. I don't even want to think about really how many thousands of dollars I spent on art supplies over the years. And I don't regret any of those purchases. There are materials that I haven't used much and I've passed them on to other people. People have passed on the art materials that they don't use. Often now, I take the art materials I don't use and I take them to work and I let the kids have them. And I will tell you that if there's one thing that I've learned working with kids, it's if people want to make art, they're going to make art. And whatever I give to the kids, they will make art with in a way that will open my eyes and I will learn from. So, yeah, I think the majority of those of us who've been making art for a long time, whether you're on YouTube or not, you've amassed a collection. In the stationery community, they call it Sable, stack acquisition beyond life expectancy. In photography, they call it GAS or gear acquisition syndrome. Pick whichever one you want, but I think we suffer from a fair amount of gas and sable in the art journaling community, and that's fine. And if you're not going to use it, pass it on to someone else. If you are going to use it, then just enjoy it. Don't regret it. Use it and enjoy it. You can build your kits up over time, and that is okay. You don't have to start out with everything. I've long been an advocate for buying singles of a color or smaller sets. You don't need the 72 color set. You get the 12 color set and use the heck out of it and then upgrade to the 72 color set if you decide you like a material. Because you might not like the material, and then if you've, spent $100 on the 72 color set, you start to regret that and you start to resent your art journal. But if you start small and you're like, yeah, I dig this material, then you don't regret it. You start to love it more. Um, so going back into the Everything Everywhere journal system, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is actually journaling in the Everything Everywhere journal. So I do a lot of different journaling techniques. I did a zine called Useful Journaling. I have um, number one and number three available on my Ko-fi site if you're interested. But the idea between use of useful journaling is that, in order to make journaling useful, is finding a technique that works for you and works well for you. Um, and you do that through testing different techniques. And so useful journaling was just each installment of the zine was different techniques for journaling that you could test out and play with. And they ranged from written journaling techniques to visual journaling techniques. And I do a lot of different journaling techniques in my Everything Everywhere journal. And I want to talk specifically about venting techniques or mind dump techniques that deal with sensitive issues. So, because my Everything Everywhere journal goes with me everywhere, I take it with me to work. And I want to be specific about um, making it a safe space. So, if I have a hard day at work or have a difficult time with a coworker, I need to journal about that. That's how I work out my emotional state on things. This is how I formulate what I think about stuff. And I do it through journaling and not just written journaling, but I also do it through visual journaling. So the images that I make are, sometimes they're meditative activities in terms of like drawing. They are something that centers me, calms me. But also, I think the mind dump journal is super important. The mind dump or event is where you basically write down everything that was difficult about, or everything that's in your mind dump is specific about dumping everything from your mind onto the page, letting it go onto the page. Whereas a vent is more about venting about a particular situation that has upset you or bothered you, and then because you always have to follow it up with a why in the vent system, you got to really explore the whys and the hows of what made it a difficult moment, and that's hard. So let's say I take my Everything Everywhere journal with me to work, and I have a rough day at work. I had an issue with a coworker, and I vent about that on the page. Perfectly acceptable and a great use of an Everything Everywhere journal, in my opinion. But depending on your workplace, is that a safe thing for you to do? Um, is it safe for you to have that information written out in a place where your coworkers could potentially see it? Now, depending on where you work or who you work with, that might not be a safe situation. I happen to work in a space where I think most of my coworkers would be respectful of whatever, if I have a sketchbook sitting out, they ask if they can see it. Um, and, they would accept no as an answer. But I've also worked in places where I've had coworkers that are absolutely not respectful of personal space. I had an office and I walked in to a coworker who was like looking at all the stuff on my desk. And if I'd had my personal journal out, they would have had no qualms about looking at that as well. It really depends on who you work with and where you work. So I think venting and mind dumping are incredibly important aspects of journaling. There's something that I use on a regular basis, and I really think that if um, you are considering using them, being cautious with where you leave your Everything Everywhere journal while you're at work is very important. When I do a mind dump or a vent, I will flip to the back of my journal. I'll mind dump and vent in some of the last few pages. And then what I'll do when I get home is I'll pull that page out. I'll slice it out of the journal or tear it out so that I'm not taking a mind dump or a vent with me back and forth to work. That just doesn't feel comfortable for me. I mean, maybe you're going to be comfortable with it, maybe not. Again, it's entirely up to you. It's your journal. Um, but I feel safer when I leave the mind dump and the vent at home. Generally speaking, I mind dump and I vent in a separate journal because I don't take that with me everywhere. Um, it some if I am, exploring something a little more difficult, or a rough topic, then I'm gonna leave that at home. Now, in my Everything Everywhere journal, what I do typically journal about is a lot of ideas for this channel, for my Ko-fi page. I journal about a lot of art journaling related ideas. I take notes. In the video, I just flipped past a page with a notes from the Struthless Vomit Journaling System video that I just watched. Great video. I'll link it in the comment, or not the comments, in the description. And terrible name for a journaling system. It uses a lot of CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy techniques that are fantastic. Just awful name, but great system, awful name. Uh, so, like, I do stuff like that. That is part of my journaling. Also, what I talked about before, sort of my journaling philosophy, if you will, that was a journal page. I was kind of thinking about all of the ideas that I have about journaling and that philosophy. And for me, journaling that out, doing a bit of a mind dump on that topic, and a brainstorm allowed me to formulate that into something more coherent. I will also often journal out a lot of ideas for Ko-fi, my blog, here in my journal before it ever goes online. So those ideas might be mind dumped. Those ideas might end up nowhere. But it's important to get those ideas out, to journal about them, to think them through, so that I can either leave it behind or use it for something else. And that, for me, is a primary purpose of the Everything Everywhere journal, is to kind of capture these fleeting ideas, um, record them, get them down on paper, and then decide if it's something I want to pursue more fully and flesh out fully in either a video or a blog post or some other manner. It really depends. So that's the sort of philosophy and idea behind journaling. Um, Again, like, it really depends on how you use your Everything Everywhere journal in terms of journaling. I would just caution against, or not really against, but using protective measures for your journaling. Like, I've used in the past, I've got a whole series of videos about obscuring your writing, because that is something that has come up again and again. And like I've said, I live in a safe house. My partner isn't going to read my Everything Everywhere journal or look at any of my journals without talking to me about it first. Like, she would definitely ask before she would look at my journal. But I've definitely had coworkers that would, if I had a sketchbook sitting on a desk, they would open it up. I don't think I have any currently, but that's something that definitely could happen. Um, so yeah, just a few thoughts on the Everything Everywhere journal system, the philosophy of art journaling, and keeping myself safe, because you never know how people are gonna respond when they see an art journal sitting out on a table, because they are visually very interesting, and not everyone can resist the urge or the call of the Everything Everywhere journal and what it looks like. I do want to talk a little bit about planner parts. I think the planner section of my Everything Everywhere art journal is a little different than most planners. I pulled have pretty heavily from bullet journaling for some of my Everything Everywhere journal. Like I've mentioned, I have a personal Everything Everywhere journal. I also have a work Everything Everywhere journal. Um, so my personal Everything Everywhere journal, I sometimes use a habit tracker. Sometimes I don't. It really depends on how I'm feeling about that sort of thing. Sometimes I, abandon them halfway through or after they've been used a bit. And I do that. I take my page, I take a spread, and I fold each page in half towards the middle. And then on the left-hand column, I will rubber stamp a calendar stamp that I have. Um, that is blank, and then I will fill that out with gel pens for the days of the month. And then within that, I will make note of paydays, doctor's appointments, and important stuff like that. Um, I use it mainly to give an overview of 6 months at a time. I don't do a whole year. I really only do 6 months at a time because that works for me. So that's that left hand column that gets 3 months on each page, depending on the size of the journal. I've had other journals where I do 4 or 5 just because they're huge. And then in the right hand column on each page, I will write out in collaboration, I guess, or conjunction with the month, the various appointments and things that I need to be aware of. And it just gives me a good glance at what's going on in my life over a 6 month period. Typically, an Everything Everywhere journal will last me roughly 6 months. And so that's a good period of time to have in that section. All right, so there we go. A little bit of philosophy, a little bit of like nuggets of wisdom, I guess, or insight around the Everything Everywhere journal. I'm going to take a moment and thank you for being here. Thank you for your support, the thumbs ups, the likes, the conversation in the comments. Is there anything that you do in your journaling techniques to keep yourself safe from prying eyes? Anyway, leave that in the comments and I'll see you next time. Thanks and bye.